You might have noticed that many of the stories in the Yoga Vasishta could perhaps more accurately be described as case studies in self-enquiry. They're verbalizations, articulations of those who have pursued self-enquiry. And usually we're told the name, or sometimes the process is just described. And in this particular chapter, which follows on from chapter 80, no particular name is given until the end of the chapter, where Vasishta ascribes this particular line of inquiry to the sage Samvarta. I've pointed out previously that traditional yoga and self-enquiry are really quite different things. Although there's no reason why a yogi shouldn't practice self-enquiry. Traditional yoga puts a lot of emphasis on purification, for example. Purification of the body, purification of the mind. And yogic meditation practices usually involve some kind of concentration, some kind of focusing. And none of that is actually conducive to self-enquiry. Self-enquiry is only about one particular focus, and that's on the focusing itself, on the attention. Any other kind of focusing is actually going to take you away from self-enquiry. It might take you into higher states of consciousness. You might experience quite blissful states through protracted focusing or concentration exercises, concentration meditations. But that's not self-enquiry. That's not going to take you to the absolute. You might not want to take my word for that, but you could look at the case of the Buddha, for example. The Buddha was a great yogi before he became the Buddha. He practiced yogic concentration. He pursued ascetic practices. And in fact, he was renowned for his ability in these areas. But he saw they didn't lead to enlightenment. And even after he became the Buddha, he acknowledged that these practices gave him no benefit whatsoever in terms of realization of the truth. You might wonder, well, why do yoga then? Indeed, there is no spiritual advantage to yoga whatsoever. There might be emotional benefits, there might be physical benefits, there might be mental benefits, but spiritually there's no benefit whatsoever. And what I mean by spiritual is turning the attention on itself, bypassing the mind, and realizing the nature of our immediate situation. So in some of these descriptions of self-enquiry, we have bits of yoga coming in, because self-enquiry can be practiced by a yogi. And for the yogi, quietening the mind is very important. Being able to stop the mind altogether, or in the language of the yogi, to be able to kill the mind. So let's follow on this particular line of inquiry, which was adopted by the sage Samvarta. Vasishta continued, O Ram, thus having reflected, the wise man should proceed further in the following manner. When the self-consciousness alone is all this, and when the mind has been cleansed with its understanding, what is mind? Mind is surely non-existent. Whether it is unseen or it is not mind, or it is an illusory appearance, this much is certain. Either it does not exist, or it is mere illusion. Now that both wickedness and delusion have ceased, I do not see what the mind is. The yogic emphasis is on destroying the mind, but here the mind has just been transcended. We've gone beyond it. The mind is the sum of all our notions and of our involvement and attachment to these notions. And getting beyond the mind is it's like getting beyond an infatuation and realizing that you're a bit foolish. All my doubts have ceased. I am without the fever of agitation. Whatever I am, but without craving. When the mind ceases to be, the craving ceases to be too. When the mind is dead and the craving is dead, delusion has vanished and egolessness is born. Hence I am awakened in this state of wakefulness. When there is only one truth and diversity has no reality at all, what shall I investigate? So this is the end of self-enquiry. You come to that state of pure being. I am the eternal self that is omnipresent and subtle. I have reached that state of reality which is unreflected in anything, which is beginningless and endless, and which is utterly pure. Whatever is, and whatever is not, the mind and the inner reality are all the one infinite consciousness, which is supreme peace beyond comprehension, and by which all this is pervaded. Let the mind continue to be, or let it die. What is the sense in inquiring into all this, when the self is established in utter equanimity? I remain in a conditioned state as long as I was foolishly engaged in this inquiry. Now that through this inquiry I have reached the unconditional being, who is the inquirer. Such thoughts are utterly useless now that the mind is dead. They may revive this ghost known as the mind. Hence I abandon all these thoughts and notions. Contemplating the Om, I shall remain in the self in total inner silence. So rather than get involved in thoughts, here we've got a good use of a concentration practice focusing on Om, rather than just letting the mind ramble on. Thus should a wise man investigate the nature of the truth at all times, whatever he may be doing. On account of such investigation, the mind remains established in itself, freed of all its agitation, but performing its natural functions. The holy ones with unconditioned consciousness live and function here, freed from pride and delusion, with their heart ever rejoicing, their countenance shining with a divine radiance, and performing their natural actions. The above line of inquiry was adopted by the sage Samvarta, who himself described it to me once upon a time.